Tally.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sabra, members of the press gallery, all of my wonderful parliamentary colleagues, our wonderful federal Greens team and people from right across the country. Thanks so much for attending today. Let me begin by acknowledging that we are on Aboriginal land. I want to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people as the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I acknowledge that the entire economic prosperity of this nation was founded on an act of theft, and it is profoundly disrespectful that we celebrate our National Day on a day that represents so much hurt and suffering for our Aboriginal brothers and sisters. It's time we change the date. Look, Australians really only want a few simple things from their governments. They want them to plan for the future, to care for people and to stand up for the environment. And they want them to do it with a bit of honesty and integrity. And over the last decade, they have been let down on all fronts. We're now at a point where the Liberal government is incapable of making even routine, common-sense decisions because, in large part, they reject the modern world. As of right now, the Liberals have installed, as our new Energy Minister, a climate denier, a man who refuses to legislate our Paris targets and is prepared to walk away from the renewable energy target in 2 years. This is a Liberal party that has no energy policy and no climate policy. Now, these things they're not optional extras. Our energy system powers our entire economy, and our climate system determines every single aspect of our lives. It's now crystal clear that the new leadership team, I use the word new in inverted commas, have no agenda. They've got nothing. And when the government has no clear direction, the country has no clear direction. The latest round of political bloodletting was seen by the public for what it is, a continuation of the division, the knifing of leaders, the sacrifice of policy principles for short-term political gain. A shameful repeat of the last decade. Just swap Labor and Liberal around. It's clear that our political institutions are failing us at a time we need them most, when our economy has stopped working for people and people have had a gutful. Sure, folks are hearing about how strongly the economy's growing, but they're not feeling it, they're not experiencing it for themselves. Corporate profits have reached record highs of $335 billion, up 10%, while wages are stuck at record lows of 2%. People see these record profits. They see the record level of donations from corporate Australia to both our major political parties, and they can join the dots. They can see that we've handed over control of our economy to big companies who pursue profit at any cost. They see years of dysfunctional government that's delivered an ecological crisis of a scale that's never been seen before. The Arctic is melting. The reef is dying. The Murray-Darling is parched dry. We've got an economic system that's delivered greater economic inequality and a tax system that, for many corporations and wealthy individuals, has become a tax avoidance system. And of course, it's delivered huge increases in the costs of essential services such as energy, banking, telecommunications and housing. These rising costs have squeezed us into a giant bubble of personal debt. You know, this country has the second highest personal debt in the world. It's what happens when you've got decades of corporate influence over our politics. See, politicians from both sides, they're so convinced that if you shrink the size of government, if you privatise essential assets, if you cut taxes and regulations, that we'll all magically be better off. So what's good for business is good for people. Both parties now offer a prescription for the future that is the same one that has got us into this mess. Just look at trade deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, now supported by both the Liberal and Labor Party, that will give corporations a veto over our nation's ability to protect our environment and to protect public health. Or look at the bipartisan commitment for more tax cuts. You see, those tax cuts for big business might not have passed the parliament in this term, but when the Shadow Treasurer says that Labor will deliver those very same tax cuts as soon as the budget reaches a 1% surplus, we know we're in for more of the same. People have had enough. They want us to take back control of our economy and to make it work for them again. From banking to energy to health to education, to communications, to aged care, right across all of life's essential services. Now, we can see what the next election is going to be fought over. It's going to be fought over fear and greed. You're going to have racist dog whistling, this race to the bottom. You're going to have bribes in the form of tax breaks that leave corporate power untouched. People have had a gutful. We need a better plan. Politics, as usual, is no longer an option. That's why in the lead up to the next election, I'm going to deliver a series of speeches on the Greens' economic plan to reshape Australia's economy so that it works for all of us, not just a privileged few. At the heart of the plan is the principle that a strong economy depends on a healthy environment, not the other way around. It's a plan that uses the tax system to redirect economic activity away from speculative, unproductive or damaging industries and into the jobs of the future. It's a plan that invests in infrastructure to pull us out of the low-growth trap and understands that it is the shape of our economy, not just its size, that's the true measure of our well-being. It's a plan that creates meaningful jobs through direct investment, rather than hoping that yet more tax cuts are going to deliver anything other than a shallow pool of jobs for financial planners and luxury car salesmen. It is a plan for our collective future. It's a plan that starts by making the case for a new role for government in essential service markets. The Greens have always fearlessly campaigned to protect our public services. We are the party of public ownership. Of course, we're not alone here. Economists right around the world, people like Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz, has put forward the case that state institutions can be even more efficient than private ones. But you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert to see that big private companies whose legal requirement it is to maximise profits shouldn't be handed the responsibility of looking after health, education or even our ability to keep the lights on. Corporate interests should not be in charge of essential public services. That is the role of government. From insurance scams to price fixing to the decimation of the public service, from aged care scandals to bank fraud to climate change to a biodiversity crisis, the consequences are being felt everywhere and by everyone. I'm going to start with an area that I spent some time working in and know well, and that's the healthcare and hospital sector. You know, in healthcare, the government is now on track to give a staggering $26 billion handout to the private health insurance industry over the next 4 years. That's more than we spend on youth allowance, the ABC, SBS, stopping climate change, renewable energy and natural disaster relief combined. And there's no support for it, no evidence for it, no evidence whatsoever. In fact, we spend far more on the rebate than we could ever hope to recoup in terms of health costs. Researchers from the University of Melbourne concluded that for every dollar we spend on this handout to the private health insurance industry, we could get $2.50 in value simply by investing that money in universal public health care. And of course, 60% of people with health insurance, they say it doesn't deliver value for them. No other industry would be sustainable in the face of such poor customer satisfaction. Yet this one does. It survives, thanks to a government that gives you the illusion of choice, but at the same time enforces a system of handouts and tax penalties and effectively removes it. Now, it doesn't have to be this way. Under our plan, under the Greens plan, every single cent of the rebate would be reinvested into the public health system. That's a $26 billion boost to public health care. Do you know what that means? That means we can have Medicare-funded dental care so that going to the dentist is just like going to the doctor. And we'd properly fund mental health services and prevention programs to keep people healthy, to keep them out of hospitals. It's sensible economics. In the aged care sector, we're also seeing the truly awful impact on vulnerable people that comes when care is being monetised for profit and when government fails to ensure that there are adequate standards in place. Now, we're going to be watching the Royal Commission very closely because we desperately need a new approach. Of course, we need to include people with disabilities in that Royal Commission, but we need an approach that puts people and not profits at the centre of their care. Education is another area of national policy where the notion of choice is being used to justify the wholesale redirection of public money to special interest groups. Last week's shameful announcement, and it was shameful, it was disgraceful, of a special handout to private schools, it undermines the very principle of sector-blind funding based on student need. It was a disgraceful announcement. Former Liberal MP and now head of the Catholic Schools Lobby, Stephen Elder, secured this pact. And you know how he did it? He did it with the support of the Labor Party helping him every step of the way. Labor doesn't want to reverse this, they want more money into this special deal. This is now worth $4.6 billion. That's $4.6 billion that is not going into those needy public schools where more than 2 million kids are right now. At a time when 1 in 10 New South Wales public schools classrooms is a demountable. Think about that. 1 in 10 classrooms in New South Wales is a demountable. We've got kids in Ipswich who are sweltering through summer and can't afford air conditioning, and yet the government's given a massive handout that's going to benefit schools in Sydney's North Shore and Melbourne's eastern suburbs. This was a disgrace. Now, we've got a different vision for schools funding. Unlike the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, we believe our first priority are our public schools. We are committed to needs-based funding, but if you're committed to it, that means investing in public schools. Every cent of that $4.6 billion handout to the private school lobby should go to the 87% of public schools that will remain under the school resource standard. That's kids in public schools who won't get the quality education they deserve because of this deal. We know that Labor and Liberal won't do it. We know they won't, because the only needs-based model that they believe in is the need to buy votes, the need to satisfy special interest groups. Vocational education, that's another area that's fallen victim to privatisation. TAFE once trained hundreds of thousands of people to gain the skills that our society needed. It was a public good. TAFE wasn't there to turn a profit. It existed to train and reskill people, to give them a pathway into the workforce. When the Labor government at the time, with the support of the Liberal opposition, privatised and deregulated vocational education, you know what young people got? They got a shonky education and no job. They're now saddled with a lifetime of debt, and the private providers have run off with bags full of cash. TAFE is a publicly owned institution, and just like our public health system, it should work to improve the quality of people's lives, not to extract profits from them. Under our plan, under the Greens plan, every cent of our vocational education budget would be invested into TAFE to train the workforce of the future, not to contort every corner of education into a competitive marketplace of contestability, whatever that means. Let's come to our energy market. Another good example of the failures of privatisation and deregulation. Energy retailers haven't improved the quality of our lives by spending money mercilessly advertising back to us. Who can say when you're having your dinner and that phone call rings with somebody asking you to change your electricity provider, that makes your life better? By the way, you're paying for that through your electricity bills. Their business strategy is based on overwhelming customers with complex, overpriced packages that you just can't compare. They rely on their customers giving up and not looking for a better deal. So what happened before privatisation and deregulation? Something novel. The government sent you a bill. Costs were minimised because they knew that the government was accountable, and if you didn't like what you got, you voted them out. It's no coincidence that the cheapest retail electricity prices are in Tasmania, where the state still runs it, or that the most deregulated energy market in Victoria has far and away the highest retail profit margins. It is now time to end this failed experiment. So what's our plan? Our plan is to re-establish a government-owned public retailer with the mandate to work in the public interest to deliver low-cost energy options and to drive real competition, rather than just being another player in the marketplace trying to scoop up super profits. This new retailer, Power Australia, would be directly owned by the Australian government and would act in the public interest, not in their commercial self-interest. The ACCC revealed that the average residential customer pays around $273 in retail costs and profits a year, much higher if you're in a deregulated market like Victoria, somewhere between $420 and $470 each year. By removing the need to make those mega profits, to continue that advertising that bombards us, to ensure that those executive salaries are kept in check, we could save an average family around $200 a year. A public retailer, along with community-owned players, would provide real competition, the sort of competition that's needed to end price gouging and super profits, while pushing down prices. It would also contract the next wave of renewable energy projects that the public so desperately want to see built. It would ensure that we have a positive alignment between our climate and energy policy by providing a guaranteed buyer for clean energy. Just as we need a government-backed alternative in the provision of these essential services, we need an independent, properly funded public broadcaster to protect our democracy. That's you, Sabra. The big media companies got media laws changed to facilitate mergers and greater concentration of ownership and power. What happened to the ABC when that happened? They got their budget cut. They got their budget cut. And of course, thanks to some brave reporting by the ABC and others, we now know that the concentration of media ownership in this country presents a clear and direct threat to our democracy. We can see that the line between journalism and campaigning to protect corporate interests has been very badly blurred. The Greens' plan, our plan, is to protect our public broadcasters by locking ABC and SBS funding into legislation so that no future government can unilaterally cut it as a political favour to the ABC's opponents. Just today we can see the pressure that the government's exerting on the ABC board. Even, it seems, demanding that certain journalists be sacked. Now, if what has been alleged in Fairfax today is true, the ABC chairman has committed a clear breach of the charter and he must go. He must resign. It is the board's responsibility to uphold the ABC charter and ensure that the broadcaster is independent at all times so that its journalists and its staff can do their job without fear or favour and hold all of us to account. It's why the Greens will continue to protect the editorial independence of the public broadcasters in legislation and ensure that there is no political interference with its charter. There's clearly a lot more we need to do in the media sector to restore trust and confidence, and we'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks and months ahead. Right here, when I was at the Press Club in April, I think it was, earlier this year, I unveiled the Greens' plan for a government-owned People's Bank. A People's Bank would offer low-frills, low-risk loans and reduce the incentive for banks to focus on lazy, speculative lending on property rather than investing in productive businesses. In the lead up to the 10-year anniversary of the GFC, we also outlined a plan to break up the banks and put the ACCC, a regulator with teeth, back in charge. It was a plan that was backed by Alan Fels and other key economists. Whether it's education, healthcare, aged care, the media or banking, the so-called markets for essential services are now dominated by a few big companies, and there's very little genuine competition going on. To quote ACCC Chair Rod Sims, their behaviour resembles synchronised swimming more than it does vigorous competition. So what do we get as a result? We get higher prices and poorer quality service. And still, despite knowing what all these problems are presenting to people, we've got no party, neither major party, not the Liberal Party nor the Labor Party, that has put forward a plan to break up the market dominance of these oligopolies and to get those essential services working for people. Working for people. Not for their donors, but working for people. Instead of tinkering around the edges, it's time for the government to intervene in a serious way to force market discipline in the best interests of customers. They could begin by listening to this advice from forward-looking economist Mariana Mazzucato, who said that when organised effectively, the state's hand is firm but not heavy, providing the vision and dynamic push to make things happen that otherwise would not have. The Greens are proudly championing publicly owned, not-for-profit alternatives in every case, because the evidence shows that the right things won't happen any other way. For the past 10 years, political donations, corporate lobbying and that revolving door between ministers and industries have combined with a culture of political division, leaving a legacy of economic inequality and environmental destruction that we're leaving this to our kids to fix. This is the legacy we are leaving to our kids and their kids. But it's not too late. It is not too late for us to change course. It is not too late. We can get our economy working for everyone if we implement the sort of plan that we've outlined today. A plan for a well-funded public healthcare and public education system. A plan for a publicly owned bank and a publicly owned electricity retailer. A plan to create real market competition, not this phony competition that just leads to higher prices for the big players. We're very proud of the role that we're playing in this parliament to shape the national economic debate. We've been leading it. We've been driving it. We were the first people to talk about the problems in banking and energy. We were criticised, we were ridiculed, and then they adopted some of our policies. Now we're the first party to propose a way to challenge these corporate giants, to present solutions that fearlessly protect the public interest and reject government by vested interests. It's a plan that's popular. But it's not just popular, it's grounded in a sound and coherent economic framework. We have people with us. It is the only genuine alternative to politics as usual. Thanks so much.